Welcome to the first episode of Base Vision Inside Security. Today we are talking about user provisioning and especially how companies are provisioning new employees. So when I have talks with customers, it's still often a topic that they are copying existing users. And today I have two experts with me which will explain how these can be changed for the future, simplified, and what are technical points to keep in mind. So, how have you seen, how has this changed in the past year or past 2 years probably? What is now possible?
I would say with Microsoft entering the whole IGA space, we have now the possibility to also cover any kind of identity governance and access related topics directly from the cloud. But this doesn't mean that it's only limited to the cloud. So we can also cover some more of the on-prem scenarios as well with Active Directory, but benefit from all the capabilities we have in the cloud. Maybe Yannick has some additions towards those.
Yeah, so I think that Microsoft, with their new provisioning service that they are now providing, which you then can couple directly into Entra ID or to on-premise, gives you lots of flexibility in order on how you get that data. And I guess the key thing for success here is that you can actually connect your HR system so that your HR system becomes the leading system for employee data, etc. Because who knows usually when a new employee starts, right? I mean, the one that should know it is HR. How often have you seen that with customers, or have you experienced that within your own firm? You have a new employee joining, somehow this information didn't get from HR to IT, which means you had a new employee starting on the first working day, but he was just not ready to do so, right? Because, oh, we forgot to set up his account. Then the employee has a bad experience on the first working day, right? So that's, I think, it's a really cool enabler to connect your HR system to your identity directory and then start your identity journey from there.
So we see there are new possibilities, but now let's start at the beginning. If you look on these, what are the problems which you have seen today in companies? You just said it's a bad employee experience. Is it also a problem from security side if we are copying user or using Excel sheets, all this manual work? Do you see also their benefits?
Yeah, for sure. So something I think which is around in every environment are user accounts which are no longer used in the environment, be it due to an external which is no longer working as a provider, for example, which has then, of course, impact on the security side, but also the danger of copying user accounts is that you have no governance about the assigned permissions, especially if you still manage any kind of permissions through on-prem Active Directory groups, so you don't benefit from things such as access reviews and maybe also some kind of approval workflows. And when you just copy users forth and back, you're kind of bypassing those more major controls that we have available as part of Microsoft Entra ID and the ID governance offerings that we have there.
Okay. So in a summary, we could say employees are benefiting because the onboarding experience is better. They have the right permission at the right time, but also from security side, it's a lower risk if the users are correctly provisioned and constantly also the same way. Okay. How does that look if you go a little bit more to the technical reason? What is possible? We have now talked a lot about Entra ID. Is it cloud only, or how does this work in a normal customer environment? Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, sure. So maybe we can show this little graphic. So basically what we have today is within Entra ID, we have this Microsoft Entra ID provisioning service. And please don't get misled by how that's named, because sort of, yeah, the provisioning service resides within Entra ID. But as you can see, is you can connect your cloud-based HR tool. So basically Microsoft here offers integration with two partners, so SAP SuccessFactors and Workday, which you can natively integrate, but you can also bring your other HR systems. You can send the data from those HR systems to the provisioning service, and then on the provisioning service, you're defining, okay, are we provisioning cloud native users or are we going on premise, right? And then you have this provisioning agent which you install on premise, which then sort of handles those new provisioning requests and creates those user accounts on-premise within your directory. They get added to Active Directory, and then of course the hybrid user gets created by leveraging Entra ID Connect Sync, which then creates that hybrid identity, right? And the cool thing is with that, you're not just automatically solving the issue for creating new users at the right time, but you're also making sure that users get maintained, which means if a user gets a change in seniority or job title or department change, etc., as soon as HR is adjusting that within the HR tool, the whole story again starts, data gets exported to the provisioning service, sent to the provisioning agent, updated in AD, and then via Enter Connect again, updated in the cloud.
Good, that sounds really cool at the end. So we can work also with customers which are hybrid and have still rely on Active Directory on-prem. You showed now to cloud HR system. Is it also working with other HR systems? What can we do there for an integration?
Yeah, so basically there, so the method that we just showed is so-called, or Microsoft calls it sort of the cloud HR-driven provisioning. So we directly connect these two HR systems to our provisioning service. As an example, what we also did within BaseVision, we are not using one of these two solutions, right? So what we can use there is we can use the thing called API-driven provisioning, where we just sort of sending the payload to that API, and then that API does the provisioning of the user account, which means in a basically very simple way, you could say, hey, you have your HR system provides an API, you're exporting that data to a CSV file, which you store on a storage account as an example, and then you have that sync job picking up the data from that storage account and sending that payload to the provisioning service. And with that, you can, I mean, if you think about the beginnings of BaseVision, where you most likely didn't even have an HR tool, right? You could have just maintained an Excel sheet with the employee data in there, and you can use that to leverage user accounts to provision them. Or you can also use SQL tables, etc. So the possibilities are sort of endless.
Good, but that sounds great this can then be used by all customers. Is there something specific which should be known regarding licenses as well?
Yeah, so the cool thing is the whole provisioning service is available to all customers which have an Entra ID P1 or P2 license. So you don't even need an Entra Identity Governance or Entra Suite license in order to use those capabilities. Of course, when we talk about more advanced capabilities, which Nicola just talked about, like access packages, etc., some of these features then require you to have at least the Entra ID Governance license. But if we talk purely about provisioning, means creating user accounts and keeping them up to date, then you're all set with your Entra ID P1 or P2 license.
Yeah. So very cool. What would be your tip for customers? What should they think about for the future? So what should be the points which they should take out of this video?
I think first one would definitely be shifting the responsibility of the whole user provisioning process really to the HR side, so that is seamlessly integrated from a provisioning perspective. Then also going more into the broad side also with the different personas you might have. So usually start with your standard users that you have in there, but probably you also have externals, guest users, admin accounts, and so on. So you can do there a lot without first discussing about the licenses, because those capabilities are built in, as Yannick mentioned. And I think something which is also sort of a quick win if you already use apps, you can integrate those a lot with Entra ID, because you can also leverage the provisioning service for SaaS applications and provisioning your users through those kind of apps. So there's a lot of useful capabilities in there which don't require step-up licensing. So that's some sort of my go-to recommendations where you can start right now building on top of those.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, this whole topic about the provisioning, this really sort of gets you started on your clouds, or on if you want to rework your current user lifecycle workflows, this is really the first thing that you need to get right. So this is the best starting point to just say, okay, we start now. We want to get our provisioning right. We want to make sure that accounts get provisioned on time, that updates get written into the directory, and that sort of sets you up for success to then further leverage those advanced identity governance features within Microsoft Entra ID, like lifecycle workflows, when we talk about things like automations which generate access credentials for employees on their day one, or other things that Nicola just mentioned, like, hey, this user has now had his last working day. We need to revoke all access, right, in order to make sure that he does no longer have access to company data. So these sort of things. And then, of course, also other topics like access packages and outbound provisioning.
Very cool. So thank you, Yannick and Nicola, for your insights from your projects. The next season will be as well about Entra ID, but then we will bring in more the topic also of really the employee journey. So also bringing in HR, what was the impact of changing these onboarding or bringing the provisioning service into real life in a company. So stay tuned for the next episode. Episode